And joining us now on the line from Los Angeles, California, Albert S. Ruddy, the producer of The Godfather, which debuted 40 years ago. And Mr. Ruddy, it's a pleasure to have you on TVO. How are you tonight?
Good. It's an honor to be here. As you said, I'm a Canuck. I was born in Montreal, and I'm proud to call myself a Canuck because I love Canada. So, hello, Canada. Here I am.
Excellent. Let's understand, first of all, how this motion picture came together. You were the producer, so your job was what?
Well, initially, there was a novel that, frankly, wouldn't fall off the bestseller list. There was reluctance at Paramount to ever make the movie because 3 years prior to that, there was another mafia movie called The Brotherhood with Kirk Douglas and Alex Cord, which was a failure. So they said, nobody cares. They thought the mafia is passé, forget it. However, the book went on for 50, 60 weeks on the bestseller list to the point of exasperation. They said, the hell with it, let's make a low-budget movie to just capitalize on the name The Godfather. I had just come off doing my first actual small movie with Robert Redford, and they called me to New York, and they had a Gulf and Western had to approve me as the producer. I came in to meet Charlie Bluedorn. I'd worked on the book, how to get 120 pages out of a 650-page book, and I walked in with my suitcase to have my lunch with him, and the door flies open. He said, hello, I'm Charlie Bluedorn. I said, hello, I'm Al Ruddy. The next line out of his mouth is, Ruddy, what do you want to do with this movie? I looked at him. He was this high-strung Austrian with his eyes twitching. I looked at him, and I looked at my book. I said, if I touch that book and start going to the facts, I'll be toast. I looked at him and said, Charlie, I want to make an ice blue, terrifying movie about people you love. That's brilliant. He bangs the desk and runs out of the room.
Okay,
how did you
decide?
Stanley Jeffy.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I asked the president of Paramount who was there, Stanley Jeff. I said, what the hell does that mean? He just relax. He goes to Charlie's office. He says, you got it. He thinks you're a genius. He thinks I'm a genius. I'm now the producer of The Godfather. I then said, Stanley, when is the next plane out of New York? I don't want to talk. I just want to get out of town before someone asks me another question, and I find out I'm not the producer of The Godfather.
That's hysterical.
And so I grabbed my suitcase, they got a car, and I got the hell out of New York City. I went back to Los Angeles, and I was the producer of The Godfather.
Huh. Who was your first choice to direct this movie? Because we know now it wasn't Francis Ford Coppola.
What had happened before I got involved? Nobody ever took the novel as a serious work of art. You know, it wasn't Tolstoy or Dostoevsky. It was a big, pulpy, marvelous novel. It was turned down by a number of important directors. Fred Zinnemann had been all over town. They then decided, let's do this movie on the cheap. Everyone forgets that The Godfather was done for under $6 million when the average movie that year at Paramount was from 25 to 30 million. So we were a low-budget movie. So they gave it to a low-budget producer, Al Ruddy, and then I had to find a low-budget director, Francis Coppola, who had done a couple of small movies. You're a big boy now. And Peter Bart, one of the executives at the studio, said, do you want to meet this guy? He said, he's really fascinating. Of course, I knew him as a writer, and I knew about his movies. So I went up to San Francisco, and he was born to do this movie. Obviously, he's a talented writer. He'd done some good movies, but he was Italian. You know, Mario Puzo and I broke the book down into a workable screenplay. But the nuance, that smell, almost the garlic smell in the oil, the nuance of it is what Francis brought together with Mario Puzo.
And how did Francis manage to get himself almost fired, though?
No, he was ready. He was ready to do this movie, I must say.
He was ready to do it, but he almost got fired.
Well, what happened, when we started the movie, we had one of the great cameramen in the world, Gordon Willis, who, as you saw as the movie went on, was the purveyor of very low-key film lighting, to the point of using almost available light, and he got squinted because the whole feeling of that underworld had a dark tone to it. So the first couple of days, the scenes are Marlon Brando, talking to the Undertaker. So now there's a cat running around the studio. It was never anticipated in the script. So Francis picks the cat up, puts it on Marlon's lap. Marlon loves animals. And now Marlon starts doing his scene. You can barely see him in the scene. And now Marlon starts mumbling because no one was used to his voice. He had that brace in his mouth. And the cat is purring as Marlon's talking. So Marlon's going, why is it going to me first? Why is it going to place? And the cat's going, I got to call him. I got to call from the studio and say, is this movie going to have subtitles? We don't know what the hell he's saying. I said, you get used to Marlon as he goes down, and we'll do some ADR lines. The cat, unfortunately, is purring so loud, he's stepping on my star's lines. But it's a great image. And Marlon loved it. So obviously, no, but there was great concern that Francis didn't know what he was doing, right? Well, look, looking at dailies of a first day shoot or a second day shoot and try to extrapolate what it's going to look like at the end, you have been around a long time and know what you're talking about. This, from its inception, was going to be a unique kind of movie, a unique looking movie, a movie that had, we had to sell the ambiance of this world. Because everyone read the book and everyone knew what had happened. Now you're trying to bring this family to life. So getting the smell, getting the feeling, getting the nuance was what this was about. And so there was a bold choice made that Francis made with Gordon Willis and the cat. But you know, the whole going that way put him in jeopardy. Because after 3 or 4 days, it was obvious what was happening. And it was obvious, look, no one can anticipate it was going to become as successful as it was. But you can start seeing a certain life. It was becoming real. And when you break that plane, when you're making a movie and suddenly say, God, it's fascinating people, you're doing the movie right. And that's when it turned. I, on the other hand, when I made my deal with the Italian-American Anti-Defamation League, I was fired. I had, they had threatened the studio at one time that they didn't want the movie made. They called up the president of the studio and said there's going to be trouble if the movie gets made. And the head of the studio said, I'm not producing it, Al Ruddy is. And they told him, hey, when we kill a snake, we chop the head off first.
Oh my
so he got hysterical, and he called me up. He said, you've got to go see Joe Colombo and the Anti-Defamation League. They're at the Park Sheraton Hotel. Go over and talk to this guy and calm him down. I go over to the Park Sheraton Hotel, which was, it's famous in the gangster lore because Albert Anastasia was killed in the barber shop. So it's one of those places. So I met Joe. It was a league meeting. It was about 30 guys. It looked like they were all out on parole. And I said, Joe, this movie will not defame Italian Americans. That's what you're worried about. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you want to come to my office tomorrow, I'm going to let you read the script. Because nobody had access to the script. And you'll see that it's not a cliche. We have a corrupt Irish cop, a corrupt Jewish producer. It's an equal opportunity employment agency. Everyone's in the same game, right? So the next day, coming down the hallway, Joe Colombo, Butter DiCicco, and Cesar Vitale. They come in my office. I lock the door. I figure the FBI's 2 steps behind them, right? So Joe sits opposite me. Butter's on the couch. Caesar's on the window where the hot air comes up. I pull out a 155-page screenplay. I said, sit, Joe. I give it to him. He puts on little Ben Franklin glasses and goes to page 1. And he looks at it for about 3 minutes. He says, what does this mean, fade in? Well, it means the screen's black. He says, oh, I can't read with these glasses. He throws the script to Butter on the couch. He says, you read it. Why me? Give it to Caesar. Now he throws the script over my head to the other guy. Now they're passing my script around like it's a hand grenade, right? Finally, Joe gets it, slaps it on his desk. He says, wait a second. Do we like this guy? Yeah, we like this guy. So what do we have to read the script for? We don't. We like. What they wanted to do was for us to delete the word mafia
Which
out
you
of
did.
the screenplay.
You did. You took Mafia and Cosa Nostra out.
We took, however, if you know anything about dealing with the real guys, they don't call themselves mafia or anything else. And the whole screenplay, it was used one time. They didn't read the screenplay, so they didn't realize that they were not getting that much. But in the script, when the consigliere comes to the West Coast to get Johnny Fontaine the job, the producer freaks out, right? In the original, it said, listen, no guinea goomba wop greaseball mafias are coming out of the woodwork to get Johnny Fontaine that job. So we crossed mafia out. There's no guinea goomba wop greaseballs. I mean, it was nothing. But I couldn't say that because they became my allies again, this movie made.
Gotcha.
And I can tell you one thing. I'll tell you this. I would rather make a deal with a mafia guy than a Hollywood lawyer. Because when you shake their hand, you have a deal. They never went around me to change the deal. So now, the next day, it comes out in the Wall Street Journal. Mafia moves in on Gulf and Western. Needless to say, the share dropped 3 points before I could get to the Gulf and Western building for a serious board of directors meeting, at which Charlie Bluhdorn said, you wrecked my company all these years. I tried to go legit, and one day, look what happened. So I'm fired. I'm literally fired, I swear to God. I told Charlie, I said, Charlie, understand one thing. I don't own one share of your company. You understand? My job is to get the movie made. That's all I care about. So I was fired. I took some cigars out of his desk, and I walked down. He calls Francis that we're shooting up at Best & Company. He says, I just fired Al Ruddy. Francis said, Charlie, don't let Al Ruddy leave. This movie's going to come to a halt. I got a call from the secretary. I came back. Charlie was salivating, twitching. One more time you talk to the press, I'll choke you to death. I said, calm down, Charlie. So now I'm back. So now I'm back on the movie, and now I've got Joe Colombo as my best friend. Everything suddenly became much easier, and we were going down the road.
You know what happened to Joe Colombo, right? You remember what happened to Joe Colombo?
Do I know what happened to Joe Colombo? Suppose I tell you, I was supposed to be on the dais next to Joe Colombo the day he was shot.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'm very aware of that. There was there was a lot of intrigue with the FBI and the Italian-American Anti-Defamation. They were picketing the FBI offices, and there's enormous subterfuge that went on, to the point, very candidly, that after The Godfather was finished, came back from Italy, came to New York, and they wanted to do a sequel. I said, guys, my car was shot up once in New York, in L.A. I was told by the LAPD I've been tailed. I had my own problems with the boys for a while. I said, you don't understand. I'm getting out clean. I don't want to do a sequel. I had a thing I wrote called The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds. I said, I want to go do another movie. I gave them back the rights to the book, and I walked out. Huh. It was, how can I say this? You know, it was everyone who did that movie, looking back at it, everyone who did that movie got another life out of it.
Did you know, though, Mr. Ruddy? Tell me this. Did you know, as you were making that movie, that you were making one of the greatest movies of all time? Did it feel that way when you were making it?
No, I wouldn't be pretentious enough to say that I was making the greatest movie of all time. But I'll put it to you this way. We became very aware because the gang wars had broken out in New York. Crazy Joey Gallo got killed, was on the cover of Time magazine. The crowds were so big watching us shoot that we had to paint out all the symbols on the side of the car with the Godfather hand. And they finally allowed us, which they never let anyone do. We didn't have to announce where we were going to shoot the next day because there were too many crowds. So it became, the movie was becoming a happening, which means it would translate into money, that it would become, it was a shock to get an Academy Award almost, remember, 1 year later. That hardly ever happened. We opened in March, and the Academy Award was the next year in March. So keeping that going, that enthusiasm going for the Academy was very difficult, but it never died out.
I've got a little birthday present for you here, Mr. Ruddy, because I know you, should I say the number? I know you had a birthday a couple of days ago. Do you want me to say the number or not?
Oh, why not? When I look like this, the number would be astounding.
I was going to say, you look fantastic for a man of 82 years old, so congratulations. There was an associate producer who worked on your motion picture by the name of Gray Fredrickson, and he's going to join us for the next part of the program, and I thought you might like to say hello to him as a happy birthday gift. Gray, are you there in Oklahoma City?
I'm here. Am I on?
You are right now. Say hello to your old friend Al Ruddy.
Ruddy.
Hey, Gray. How are you, Gray? You know, I tried calling you yesterday.
I tried to call you back, but you were busy. You were talking to China.
Anyhow, listen, great. The guy doing this show is really terrific, Steve. And I've had a lot of fun with him. I told him I did everything, which is not true. Obviously,
Yes, you did.
Grave Fredrickson did more than I would ever acknowledge. Without him, it never would have happened. So I not only respect Grave, but I love him as a person. So, Steve, it's been a pleasure meeting you. And if you want to send cash, you have my office number, right?
I will send cash, but no horses' heads in any beds. Don't worry about that.
Anyway, it's been a real pleasure to me. I hope to see you one day up north.
I appreciate that, Mr. Ruddy. Thanks so much for coming on TVO tonight. We're really grateful. Well, let us more...
Great to see you soon.
Very good. Let us more formally introduce who we've got coming up now to talk about this motion picture. In Oklahoma City, the aforementioned Gray Fredrickson, artist in residence at Oklahoma City Community College and the associate producer of The Godfather. And back here in studio, cultural critic Chandler Levack, John Montesano, former editor of Italian magazine, and Tom Ernst, host of TVO's own Saturday Night at the Movies. Great to have everybody around this table, and I'm glad you were able to watch that interview.
What a pleasure.
Gray Fredrickson, thanks so much for being on the line there for us. I want to go around here because I guess Mr. Ruddy told us that when they were making the picture, they didn't really realize they were making one of the greatest pictures of all time. And I want to pick up there. Gray Fredrickson, when you were working on this movie, did you realize you were in the process of creating something very special that people would be talking about decades and decades later?
No. It was a certain point towards the end of the production that we were talking one day and we said, you know, this might become a big hit, this movie. It's starting to look pretty good. There's a lot of talk around because I'm from Oklahoma and my family were back in Oklahoma when we were in New York making the movie, and they were hearing all about it. So that was kind of, it was spreading out. The word was getting out.
Let's go around the table here, and I want to get ideas from all of you as to why this picture was so good. Don't tell me everything you know about the answer. Just give us one thing. Tom, why is this one of the greatest movies ever made?
Well, because for one thing, we judge our films sometimes the way we judge the people we know or are inspired by the people we know, and it's excelled from its original source. We heard them talk about the book being a bestseller, but it was exactly as Mr. Ruddy suggested. It was a pulp fiction magazine and not very good. And with apologies to Mr. Puzo, it wasn't that well written. And it became an exceptional film because it interpreted the book and it interpreted to the language into something that I think we can actually say is artistic. And so it didn't try to, even though we heard that they wanted to capitalize on the title, it didn't try to just repeat what was in the pages. It actually interpreted what was in the pages and became phenomenal.
Chandler, what would you say?
I think it's just Michael Corleone has like the most primal conflict, which is that you can't escape your family. You know, everyone tries to do better than their parents or posit themselves in opposition to their parents, but your family is such a primal part of who you are, and his conflict, he eventually takes over the family business, even though he's trying to escape from it. He's fighting all the way through. I think it's something that everyone can relate to. You
remember Brando's line to Pacino? I never wanted this for you. I wanted you to be a senator or a governor. And here he is running the whole organized crime operation by the end. John, how about you? Why is this a great movie?
I think it was the powerful juxtaposition of the seed of Puzo's original idea, which was this metaphor of the gangster, the American gangster, being akin to the American corporate business person, married with Coppola's context of this familial struggle. I think this notion that somehow the Corleones could justify all this action, all this evil, as a result of protecting these customs and familial ties that were important to them is absolutely ridiculously false, and it was a sign of the times then, and is relevant 40 years later, and will probably be relevant for hundreds of years.
Gray Fredrickson, I want to raise this with you because Al Ruddy told us that there was a movie called The Family that had come out just a couple of years before that wasn't very good, so it's not like The Godfather was the first mafia movie to come along. There had been plenty. But The Godfather felt and was different. What in your view was different about that as a so-called organized crime film?
The picture that came out a couple of years prior was called The Brotherhood.
Oh, The Brotherhood, excuse me.
And it starred Kirk Douglas and Alex Cord, and it died. And it was, I remember the logo was, the guy kissed him on the mouth, you know, the kiss of death, the mafia kiss of death. And so the word got out that a mafia movie is the kiss of death, guys. We can't do it. But they owned the rights to the book, and the book was just taking off, and like Ruddy said, was a huge. Why do I always have to follow Ruddy? He's so good. How can you? I don't like following that guy, and I'm always the one that has to follow him. But anyway, Francis brought the realism to it. Francis, I got to be part of the Coppola family for 20 years. I did all 3 Godfathers and Apocalypse Now, and was taken into the Coppola family like one of theirs. And so I got to live and experience the Coppola, or the Italian family experience. And I'd also lived in Italy prior to starting on the Godfather movies. So I saw the authenticity of the Italian, just the relationships. And Francis used to say, you know, this is really just a movie about a family that happens to be in a strange business.
A family in a strange business. That's a neat way to look at it. But this was a different picture,
Yeah.
Tom. It felt different from other organized crime pictures.
Well,
And you've seen them all, right?
I've seen a lot of them,
Yeah.
including The Brotherhood. It was different because of Willis's lighting. It was different because of Coppola's direction and feel for the film and feel for his characters. We've got a great sprawling family drama here. And yes, they're Italian in this, and yes, they're in organized crime. But in other ways, if you sort of take a step back, you could see anybody's family in some form here.
Chandler, let's not forget, this picture starred Marlon Brando, who wasn't on screen all that much, but boy, did he capture the story, didn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, he's dead, or almost dead, or posited to be dead for a large part of the film. He's in the hospital room, but he's still, I mean, it's his movie. And I think there's so many other commanding performances from James Caan and Robert Duvall and, of course, Al Pacino. But, you know, people remember The Godfather for The Godfather.
John, I want to pick up on something that you wrote 15 years ago.
Wow.
On the occasion of the 25th anniversary of The Godfather. And this picks up again on something Al already talked about, which the Italian-American community in the United States not being thrilled about this picture. Here's what you wrote in the Globe and Mail back in 1997. Many Italian Americans took exception to the film. Unfortunately, the most vocal and well-publicized opposition came from the Italian American Civil Rights League, whose head, Joe Colombo, ironically was reputed to have ties to organized crime. Throughout the film's production, the League tried to sanitize references to Italians and threatened to create trouble with the unions and locals in the neighborhood locations in New York if its demands weren't met. Its opposition was organized and well-funded after Frank Sinatra, who at one time was rumored to want to buy the movie rights and play the Don himself, held a large rally at Madison Square Garden for the purpose of stopping the filming of The Godfather and raised $600,000. Soon after, Vic Damone dropped out of the role of Johnny Fontaine, a character in the film reputedly based on Sinatra, because he said the film is not, quote, in the best interest of Italian Americans. In early 1971, members of the League sat down with the film's producer, Al Ruddy, and brokered a deal to eliminate all references to Mafia or Cosa Nostra from the script. Coppola admitted the word Mafia never appeared in the final shooting script. In a bizarre twist, Colombo's son, Joe Jr., was shot 4 times in the head at a rally to protest the Italian gangster image in Hollywood only weeks before the film's opening. Bottom line, John, did the film do, in your view, what I guess many feared it would, which was to create a bad stereotype of Italian Americans?
Well, I think the defamation argument has validity. I mean, whenever you associate a monolithic view on a cultural, in this case it's Italians, when you say, you know, Italians have an association with the mafia, it's not in any way positive. It's defaming them. However, it's a bit simplistic to just simply kind of evaluate the movie on those terms, because what made the film so brilliant and whenever this kind of material is in the hands of someone as brilliant as Coppola or as more recently David Chase, these people have an ability to kind of take those stereotypes and take those images and juxtapose them with cultural attitudes, cultural habits, cultural scenes that validate much of what's great about Italian culture. So I would say in the case of The Brotherhood versus The Godfather, compare the first 20 minutes of those two movies. The Godfather, the first 20 minutes, if you watch them, are about a wedding scene.
A wedding.
I bet you the Brotherhood, I've never seen it. Tom may share some ideas about the Brotherhood's probably has no wedding scenes in it. Though, but it's more than a wedding scene. It's an orchestra. It's people passing around panini sandwiches. It's people singing Italian songs. And in the background, there's this mysterious thing going on. That was the brilliance of Coppola. For Italians who were watching this movie that was being revered and talked about and popularized, they didn't see necessarily the mob activity. They saw the wedding scenes. They saw things that had not really been portrayed in American cinema that often.
Let me get Gray on this. Gray, did you feel that the film defamed Italian Americans?
Matter of fact, the Italian community, and especially the guys, you know, the people that Ruddy was dealing with, loved the movie. They even wanted to have their own premiere of the movie, and they still refer to the movie. If you notice in The Sopranos, they're all talking about the movie all the time. They thought it glorified and made them all look wonderful.
For the head, Tom, of an organized crime family, we seem to have an unusual amount of sympathy for Brando's character, Vito Corleone. How come?
You know, I'll borrow some of the things that Chandler also had mentioned to me about that, because we were talking about that earlier. I think they needed to soften the Godfather to make him, he's kind of the good guy in this movie. We're dealing with bad and badder in this, and he has the cat, and Chandler, my apologies, because you actually introduced some of these ideas to me, but he has the cat in his arms. He seems like the man espousing wisdom. He's giving gifts to people who come to his door, you know, who are asking for favors. And he also says that, and no drugs. We're not going to deal in drugs. And that also makes him good. Like, and we're going, okay, we're going to root for this guy. And I think that's why we need to find an in to these characters. And the book, as I think John will tell you, doesn't. He's not as good. He's quite nasty in the book. All that's removed.
Chandler, why do we like Vito Corleone so much?
He's a good guy. He does bad things,
he's
but
a killer. He's a killer.
There's a moralism to this movie, and one of the most powerful things I think about it is that it makes you identify with people that you know commit such acts of murder and violence and evil, but you understand them and you identify with them, and it's through, you know, that amazing cinematography. I think Pauline Kael said in her review that Gordon Willis' cinematography looked like a Rembrandt painting. You know, it's powerful, even though they're gangsters.
You mentioned David Chase a second ago, and of course a reference to The Sopranos, and I guess we still have this sympathy for the guy who's the head of a family struggling, and in Tony Soprano's case, he's actually killed people with his bare hands, and we still like him.
It's the charisma, it's the vicariously living through people that are really not around us. I mean, I think a lot of it is escapism, but in the case of Corleone, it was really this idea of a man who was motivated by respect and the protection of his family. If you think about that opening scene, the I Believe in America, that famous scene, the end of that scene, really what Corleone wants is respect. You don't come to me for my friendship. You know, you don't come to me, you know, instead you come to me asking me to do these things that are despicable. So he almost seems like he's a guy who's above killing, you know, and that again is the brilliance of the writing. I mean, you immediately connect with that. You immediately understand this is a man who's motivated by things that are bigger than eliminating his enemies. And that's what makes him so lovable or so endearing.
You talk about the beginning of the movie, and Gray Fredrickson, I want to take you to the end of the movie because the juxtaposition of the baptism of the Godfather's grandchild with all of the massacring that is going on at the same time is plain and simply one of the great scenes in motion picture history. Tell me why you think that all those sequences are so special.
Well, we're still talking about it, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever seen anything like that before, and it just sort of capsulized the whole thing. There was the birth of a new child and the death of all of these other people all at the same time, and him renouncing the devil, and it was the height of drama that obviously worked.
I gather when they first did it all, the organ was not a part of it. That came later. What a nice touch that was. Can you tell us a bit about that, the technical side of things?
Well, now, what organ are you? You mean the soundtrack?
Exactly.
Music?
Yeah, the church organ underneath all of the killing and underneath the baptism. That apparently wasn't in the first pass, but they added that later.
Well, Francis's dad, Carmine Coppola, had a lot to do with the music on this picture, and there was a resistance to him. As a matter of fact, they didn't even want to take him with us to Sicily when we went over there, and I had to sort of sneak him airfare and per diem money so he would come over and write all the wedding music for the thing, because Francis wanted him there, and he was very instrumental in that. And I think he's the one that came up with that idea of the organ, but that was sort of done in the final mix of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Good idea. Tom, the ending. What makes it work so well?
Well, the ending, when I think of the ending, I of course think of the garden sequence as well. So I think it works well because it summarizes the whole picture that we've just seen, and it's a lengthy film. And it also brings us to the next level. Of course, we don't know at that time of watching the film that there's going to be a next one, but it leads us to Michael's closing the door scene. And I just think the whole thing is orchestrated so beautifully. And it is like a symphony. It is like an opera, all in that one segment.
There's something, Chandler, about seeing this little child who was played by
Sophia Coppola.
Very good. You guys are good. Yes, Sophia Coppola played the grandson actually being born at that moment. Having this religious service juxtaposed with all of these other mobsters being gunned down at the same time. What a shocking juxtaposition.
Yeah,
wonderfully done.
I agree with Tom. There are these variations between light and dark. It's almost like a very contrapuntal film in that way, that there's a tension between these two themes of rebirth and then also of redemption. But then it's interesting, you identify with Michael so greatly and his whole narrative arc throughout the movie, that when he's saying those statements about, taking these religious oaths and
I do renounce the devil.
Yes, you almost believe it, even though it's juxtaposed with some of the most brutal violence in the movie.
I think we should believe it though, because I think it's the end of the arc. That's a great way of positioning it. It really is Michael transforming himself from one suit and one set of beliefs. At the beginning, he's in a military suit, to another suit. He's wearing a very sharp, probably Armani suit in the middle of his family, and he's saying these things that he really probably believes. He thinks he believes these things, and it's a rite of passage into a whole other doctrine and a whole other way of living. However, I mean, it is absolutely sinister. I mean, Coppola was saying something so sinister and trying to damn Michael. I mean, his hope was that the viewers would see this and go, "This is unbelievably nasty." But it didn't work out that way, because he had made the family so appealing that it left everybody feeling like Michael had won the day and he was the good guy.
Gray, I'm going to ask you a very unfair question. In a way, it's a kind of a which one of your children do you love the most question. But I want to know what your favorite scene is in the movie.
In the original Godfather?
Yes.
The original Godfather, my favorite scene. Well, I have, like you said, it's tough. What's your favorite child? Production-wise, I love I mean, it was such a great undertaking, the killing of Sonny in the toll booth, with all of the electronic charges for the hits of the bullet hits, thousands of bullet hits. Also the production value of the wedding scene and all of the stuff that was going on at the same time, and how they were shot in segments, all of that stuff, but it all pieced together so well, with the FBI marking the cars out in front, and the Godfather receiving people in the office, and the guy singing with his false teeth popping out in the tarantella. So yeah, those are, I guess, if they pop to mind as my favorite scene. But I agree also with the scene with Marlon Brando with the orange peel in his mouth, dying in the garden. That's pretty powerful.
Sure was. Tom, how about you?
Well, I want to cheat and show you a few scenes, but I won't. Human drama is always what affects me most. So it's the brother-in-law, Carlos, when he, after he is accused of killing Sonny, and that seems like you're damned. But he seems to ingratiate himself, and just like Fredo in part 2, we start liking him. We start liking him. He starts following orders. He starts becoming part of the family.
Remember, this is a bad guy. He's beat his wife. He's set up his brother-in-law to be killed. Yeah, he's a bad guy.
He's a bad guy. But then after they confront him and they spare his life, he turns around. He's now nice to Talia Shire, and she even begs for his forgiveness. But when they take him to the airport and they creep up from behind, I just find that terrifying. And that really resonates with me. That and the man who is preparing to go in to talk to the Godfather in the wedding sequence, sitting in the chair repeating repeating what he's going to say.
Luca Brasi.
Yeah, yes. Beautiful, beautiful
was a good
scene. Yeah.
Okay,
Do you know how that came about?
Go ahead, tell us.
Do you know how that came about?
Tell us, Gray.
When we made the deal with the when Al made the deal with the Colombo family and the Anti-Defamation League, all of a sudden, all the doors all around town were open to us. They were closed before, and everybody came out of the woodwork, and they all came and wanted to be in the movie. And so all the extras at the party were actually families and friends of all of the Colombos and all those people. And one of the guys was Lenny Montana, who played Luca Brasi. And he looked so scary and so wonderful. He was a convicted felon. He had served time, and he was an arsonist. And he used to tell us his tricks on how he would burn down buildings. But the first day we started shooting, Francis called me in and he said, "We got a big problem. Look at this guy." And I watched him. He said, "Don Corleone, I come to you on the day." And he says, "What am I going to do? This guy can't act. I'm in trouble." I said, "Well, we're going to have to replace him." Francis, "I'm not going to replace him. You kidding? I'll be in concrete shoes." So Francis invented that little scene that we shot the next day with him outside rehearsing the lines, so it looked like he was nervous when he went in to see The Godfather. So it made his bad speech when he went to see The Godfather sort of more believable. And those were the last lines we ever gave him. He had no more lines in the movie after
Isn't that brilliant? So that was not a part of the original script. That was a Francis figuring it out on the fly.
That was a save the day kind of scene, that little scene.
Fantastic. Chandler, how about you? Favorite scene?
I think the film works on so many levels, and one of them is a love story between Michael Corleone and Kay, played by Diane Keaton. And I love the scene at the family wedding. You know, it's the worst way to meet your boyfriend's parents at the day of the Godfathers. And he just pulls her into the family portrait for just a second, and she's like, "No, no, please." And he just stands by her, and she's in this shot with the rest of the family, even though she's the waspiest outsider you could imagine. And it's a nice foreshadowing of kind of the eventual dissolution of their relationship, and you know, the kind of push-pull between that figure. But I like the tension that she brings to the movie.
John?
I have about 23 scenes. Let me start. You know, I have to narrow it down to a couple. I'd say the scene where they kill Luca Brasi is a harrowing scene. I still have trouble seeing that scene.
Frightening.
When I watch the movie, I fast forward it. It's really, but the one scene that always has stuck out to me over the years is the transformation of Michael when he's sitting in the lounge, and he comes up with the idea of how he's going to kill Salazzo. The way Coppola shot that scene, the way everyone reacted to it, and the way it was shot, like with a kind of a wide angle going into a close-up of Michael, you can actually see the character changing before your very eyes. It's mesmerizing, and that film's littered with scenes like that, which is why we still talk about it 40 years later.
I'm a little surprised that I didn't hear anybody here refer to a very haunting 5 seconds of this movie where Diane Keaton, who now apparently needs permission to go visit her husband because he's the Godfather and not anybody can just get in there, and that last shot of the door just closing on her, and you know that her life is over. Her life is never going to be the same. That stays with me. Here's another scene. I want to play some. This is from Saturday Night at the Movies, okay?
Oh, great.
Because everybody remembers this scene. Gray, you're going to listen along here. This is Alex Rocco, who, despite his name, is playing a Jewish casino owner by the name of Mo Green, who goes to his demise in an incredibly original way. Let's roll this tape, please.
When the killer came in with the gun, Joe Lombardi was under the table. You couldn't see him with a pellet air gun. There was 2 tubes tied to my glasses hidden. Francis saw this effect in a European film, always wanted to use it. And he immediately gushed an air pellet that came up the tube and broke a real glass outwardly, followed by a blood pellet. So next time you see Mo Green get shot in the eye, you might see I was a little worried about my eye because I can hear the pellets rushing up. But that eye shot scene, I got more interviews. If there was 10 gangsters, they'd say, send in the guy with the bloody eye, so it really helped me.
It is amazing. Gray, can you talk about that scene? Because that scene, that 5 seconds, changed Alex Rocco's life forever.
It did, didn't it? And that was actually it was Joe Lombardi and A.D. Flowers. The two of them both were Academy Award winning special effects guys. Came up with that little invention of the air gun blowing the eyeglasses out. I was a little concerned because, as you know, the producer on the set, that if something happened to his eye, my God, we would never live it down. But didn't get into that. Didn't cause any problem. The biggest problem I had on the set was the horse's head.
Well, okay, we haven't talked about that yet, so you should. You want to tell us how that horse's head ended up in that bed?
Well, it was a real horse's head. We had commissioned the prop and set dressing guys had gotten a horse's head and had it stuffed. And Francis didn't like it. He said, it looks like it should be hanging on a wall. It doesn't look like a real horse's head. So we went to a slaughterhouse and picked out a horse that looked almost like the one that the real horse, painted the little white thing on its forehead, star, and said, hold the horse until we need it. So we gave it a reprieve from being killed. And it was set aside. And the day we were going to shoot the horse's head scene in the bed, we sent the people out with a big carton, a big case, and they cut the head off, put it in the case, and rushed it right to the set and put it in the bed. And when John Marley, the actor that played Woltz, got in bed and we started shooting, it was real blood, and it was still warm from the horse's head. Oof. And he was really screaming and very upset. And I thought that he was threatening to sue us. He was furious. And as a matter of fact, he was so angry that we had to double him. A scene we shot later when he was walking around outside his house in Hollywood, because he was so mad at us for putting that horse's head in the bed.
So are you telling us that he didn't know? He didn't know it was a real horse's head?
No, he didn't know it was a real horse's head. No.
Well, that was a pretty authentic performance then.
It was real. He was really freaking out.
Wow. Okay, good story. Let me do a tack left on this one now. For a movie that has been so praised over the years, The Godfather was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. And do you remember how many it won?
2, 3?
3.
Yeah.
It only won 3. Marlon Brando for Best Actor, Francis Coppola and Mario Puzo for writing, but not Francis Coppola for directing. Albert Ruddy picked up the Academy Award for Best Picture, but Coppola didn't win, Pacino didn't win, Duvall didn't win, Cazale didn't win. They were all nominated and all lost. Why did this movie that we are talking about 40 years later and get defeated by movies that we are not talking about 40 years later?
Well, I think that happens all the time. Dare I say we won't be talking about The Artist years later. We'll be talking about Tree of Life or The Descendants. So I think that it won Best Picture is a very good indication that the Academy occasionally does get it right. And that Godfather 2 followed up with another Best Oscar picture says that sometimes that happens. But time and time again, Raging Bull, I think, I don't know why I always use this as an example. Mary Tyler Moore didn't win for Ordinary People, and that was the best performance that year.
I got a better one.
Yes.
Go.
Kevin Costner beat out Scorsese, Goodfellas, Best
Yeah.
Director.
Oh,
for a movie that
Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves.
Right.
That's criminal.
So
So, I mean, I think the Oscars don't get it right. They're not necessarily supposed to get it right. That's a popularity contest. There was a lot of resentment for the success of the movie. I mean, these are nobodies. Gray would probably say a little bit more about this. These are not necessarily known people who are part of the Hollywood fabric. They were young, they were untested, they had no real resume behind them. So the film came out of nowhere, and I agree, the fact that it won Best Picture is a testament to the impact it had on Hollywood. And let's also remember it saved Hollywood. Hollywood was in a deep crisis. Yes. TV was the boogeyman, almost kind of akin to what's happening with the internet now and popular media. So I think Hollywood kind of felt like it owed the movie one, which is why it probably gave it the award.
Did you find that, Gray, that there was a kind of jealousy in, Hollywood royalty, that you outsiders came in and made this picture that was so fantastic?
Absolutely, absolutely. That was, we were not taken seriously at all in the beginning. And I was surprised that we won Best Picture. I didn't think we would. And we knew we had no chance of winning Best Picture for Godfather Part 2. That was never happened, a sequel winning.
But you did.
Well, we did, yeah.
Yeah, you did. Well,
But yeah, I agree. There's a lot.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry? I'm saying I agree with, like, we on Apocalypse Now, we lost to Kramer versus Kramer. How many people remember Kramer versus Kramer?
Isn't that something?
And Apocalypse Now kind of still hangs in there.
Yeah. Well, Marlon Brando did win, but of course, Marlon Brando did not show up.
No. He didn't accept it.
And we've got some tape of who did show up to accept his Oscar that night. Let's play this. We'll come back and chat. Roll tape, please.
The winner is Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
Hello, my name is Sasheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, and also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee. I beg at this time that I have not intruded upon this evening, and that we will, in the future, our hearts and our understandings will meet with love and generosity. Thank you on behalf of Marlon Brando.
Gray, what was the talk among the people who made The Godfather when Brando declined the Oscar in such a dramatic fashion?
That was insane, but he was a unique character. You know what I think we found out later. I heard recently she wasn't even Native American. She was Hispanic. That was not her real name.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Have you heard that?
Yes, indeed we have. I believe that's right. Yeah.
It was all like a scam.
Chandler,
but
what'd you make of that?
Marlon had his
Totally
causes.
Pre-Franco, classic move. James Franco would probably do the same thing today.
He would?
I'm just kidding.
I don't know. That was unusual. I mean, people didn't. Actually, I was just about to say people didn't turn down Oscars then, but I think George C. Scott did it the year before.
Oh yes, yeah. And and Woody Allen famously, of course, doesn't show up when he wins or when he won.
Well, he's got a good excuse.
Yeah.
He's playing
Well,
his clarinet
his
in New York.
clarinet, as I well know, because.
Now, let me pick up on something that John said a moment ago, and that is, The Godfather was made for $6 million, which is shocking. Everybody worked for next to nothing on this picture, and this movie earned $150 million. Chandler, is it an exaggeration to say that this motion picture 40 years ago saved Hollywood in some respects?
I think so. I mean, it was a completely different era, but it's one that proves that art cinema and commerce can go together. It's, New Hollywood cinema was all about that, and I think it paved the way for pictures like Chinatown, and every film, Easy Rider, before that, had a very different turn.
I think Chandler raises a very good point. Godfather is one of those few films where art house film lovers and commercial film lovers can sort of agree on. And the other films that you suggested, Bonnie and Clyde too, which happened a few years before that, did the same. So I think that's where this film works so well, is that almost universally we can all agree that The Godfather is a great film.
But it was short-term gain for long-term pain, because what ended up happening was that Hollywood then became obsessed with the idea of the blockbuster. It was the first blockbuster. I think at one point it was making $1 million a day, which was unheard of at the time. So this notion of the idea of like the opening day weekend, the opening weekend of the box office take. The Godfather was the beginning of that. So I think it opened up a lot of opportunities for Hollywood to be taking risks, which they kind of had to in the 70s, which opened the door for Coppola and Scorsese and all these people to come in. But Jaws happened a couple of years later,
Yep.
Star Wars, and that was the beginning of well, a different Hollywood.
Yeah. You know, I wouldn't have totally put the blame on The Godfather for this, because I think it was sort of happening in the 70s. And yes, Jaws is another, and Star Wars are also culprits in this. But I still think that The Godfather was different in that it allowed sort of this artistic idea that the blockbuster could be artistic. The blockbuster doesn't have to play to stereotypes and to sort of knee-jerk reactions of what the audience might want.
And that the sequel could be just as good as its predecessor.
Better, even, in some cases.
Well, hang on. The guy I want to hear from on this is Gray. You know, there's been a great debate in America for 38 years since the second Godfather picture came out of which one was better. Which one do you think was better?
I'm a little prejudiced. I got an Oscar for the second one.
Okay. I think the one thing everybody agrees on was that 3 was not the best of the 3. But 1 or 2 you could get into a good fight over, right?
I don't think 3 was that bad. We were nominated for a lot, quite a few. I don't remember how many, but quite a few Oscars. I think one of the problems probably was Sophia, which was a shame. It was too bad. We lost Winona Ryder right at the last moment. She had a nervous breakdown, and Francis said he had written that part with his daughter in mind. Why not let her do it? She didn't want to do it. She was begging not to do it. So the whole thing became kind of awkward, and I think that may have caused some of the problems with that movie. I think if Winona had done it, it might have had a different outcome. Who knows? But that's my feeling.
Gray, we've got about a minute and a half left, and I want to get your view on this. The American Film Institute has now said that The Godfather ranks as the second greatest film of all time behind Citizen Kane. And I want to know how that sits with you.
Well, Citizen Kane was the pinnacle of movies when I began, but it's funny, I had an assistant one time who'd never seen it and had never even heard of Citizen Kane, didn't know who Orson Welles was. And so I made him go out and rent the movie, and he came in the next day and said, I don't see the big deal about that movie. I didn't think it was that good. So, maybe The Godfather is holding up a little better over time than Citizen Kane is.
Tom, last 20 seconds to you. Godfather, number 2 of all time? You okay with that?
Well, I actually think it's probably one of the best, but Godfather 2 ranks really high in my books. The Fredo story, the Fredo arc, beautiful.
You broke my heart, Fredo. You broke my heart.
The fishing, oh, beautiful.
I want to thank all of you for coming on this program and helping us reminisce about my favorite movie of all time. Sorry, it's number 1 for me. Gray Fredrickson, a great pleasure to have you on the line, the associate producer of The Godfather, the artist in residence at Oklahoma City Community College. Thanks for being there on the line from the Sooner State. And here in studio, back in Toronto, there's Chandler Levac, the cultural critic. Chandler, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
John Montesano, the former editor of Italian magazine. John, molto piacere, grazie mille.
Pleasure's all mine.
And Tom Ernst, we'll see you up in the office later today.
Thank you.
From Saturday Night at the Movies.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.